Welcome to the Vision Driven Master Training Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. You guys were listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Shout out to you guys. And of course, everyone who's on YouTube right now. Thank you guys for listening or watching. If you guys are on YouTube, make sure you guys drop a like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you think about the podcast. As I always say, if you have questions for me, send me a DM on Instagram at Vision Driven Basketball. All my questions today are from Instagram. I posted a poll on my story. So if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you go over and do that right now at Vision Driven Basketball. If you guys are on Apple Podcasts, scroll down, leave a review for me. Let me know what you think of the show. I appreciate that. And we'll hop into it. I posted on my story yesterday, 2 days ago, as of when you guys will see this. And I asked you guys for some questions because I was going to do a Q&A. I haven't done a Q&A for a podcast since probably July or August, so I figured it was a good time to do another one. And I got a lot of questions, so I'm going to get to as many as I can. And probably, with the amount of questions that I got, I'll probably do another Q&A at some point, and I'll ask you guys again. So again, if you missed out on this one, didn't get to ask a question, make sure you guys follow me on Instagram so that when I post on my story asking for questions, you guys will see it. We'll hop into it off that. So the first question we'll get to, I thought it was an interesting question that I haven't gotten before, but I think it's a valid point, or a valid question to talk about. He asks, how to fit in different teams quickly, because I don't know why, but it's taking me a long time to do that. And how I took this is like figuring out, when you're with a new team, right, where there's probably already a dynamic of who plays, what's the system, all this stuff, and then you're the new guy in there. You've got to figure out how you fit into that. That can definitely be challenging, but there's some steps you want to take to minimize that. I think the first thing is recognizing how basically it starts with the coaching style. Like, how does the coach want to play? Does he like playing up tempo? Does he like playing a slow it down, 2-3 zone? Like, what does he like? Does he want to score 80 points a game, or does he want to win every game 20-19? Right? You have to be able to understand that. So okay, I need to be able to push the ball up the floor. I need to be able to set up the offense well. I need to be able to guard this way. Maybe we play full court pressure, so I've got to be able to really, be fast, be able to play up tempo when it comes to defense. Or maybe we play a 2-3 zone. I just have to be disciplined. I don't necessarily have to be as fast and athletic. That's something to first of all look at and say, okay, what is the actual system that this team plays, and what can I do to contribute positively to that system? Because if you don't fit the coach's system, that's where it becomes an issue. Again, unless you're really, really talented and the coach says, we're going to find a way to overcome that. If you're the new guy, you're going to find a way to immerse yourself into that. So that's something to consider off the bat. And then when it comes to, your teammates, kind of evaluating, who does what, and how you can complement that. If you have guys on your team who you've played with who, can move the ball well, you should also be able to move the ball well. And also, you've got to be able to execute when, there are plays that need to be made. So, for example, if they move the ball well on driving kicks and you're open for a 3, you got to be able to hit that shot, okay? If for example, your coach loves to play up-tempo, he's trying to score as many points as possible, they're trying to run and gun and, drive and kick, get good shots, the most fun way to play basketball. Well, you got to be able to hit shots, you got to be able to put the ball on the floor when you need to, and you're going to be able to move the basketball. And if you can do those things well, then you'll fit in that system. And if you can't, then you're going to struggle to. So that's really the first part, is recognizing what the system is and then how you can actually fit in and do that well. And then everything else comes with that, really. The stuff with your teammates, whatever else you might have to deal with. Once you have a solid grip of the system, then that stuff kind of just comes with it. So there's number one. Maddox asked me another question. He said, what's easier to develop, skill or athleticism? And I think this is kind of an interesting question because I think it depends. In my opinion, I think that skill is more straightforward to develop. Not always, but I think for the most part, it's more straightforward than developing athleticism. For example, a lot of players think that it's always like they're always so focused on like the vertical jump, right? They're like, I want to get a bigger vertical, but improving your vertical, like there's a lot that goes into that, right? It's not as straightforward. It's like, oh, go do this, and then you'll jump 40 inches, because everybody's genetics are different. The way everybody's body reacts to training is different. And a lot of times just how you've grown up can affect that. So for example, genetically, right, you might just be born and, you're just a naturally gifted athlete. For that player, developing their athleticism, which is already at a pretty high level, might not be that difficult. Okay. But for a player who's the opposite end of the spectrum and isn't a gifted athlete, for them to get to a high level athletically, it's going to be much more difficult and much more complex than it would be for somebody who just straight up is a great natural athlete. Okay. So in a sense, I think that athleticism is more difficult. But for some people, it's the opposite. For some people, they're just naturally really good athletes, and then the skill part is what they actually have to focus on. That's more difficult for them. I think, as a general rule of thumb, though, skills are much more straightforward to develop. Right? You don't necessarily have to switch everything up depending on the different player, right? And it's much more straightforward what goes into it. For example, with the vertical jump, it's or becoming an athlete in general, it's not just about how high you jump, right? A lot of times we'll be like, oh, how high do you jump? Like, can you dunk? That makes you a good athlete. But there's so many other things that go into, can you move laterally well? Okay. Are you able to, like, it's not even necessarily like, okay, can you jump high, but can you jump high quickly, right? Can you jump high to get a rebound? Can you jump high in traffic? Like, there's so many things that go into being a good athlete. So that's why I would say that the athletic piece of it is a little bit more difficult than developing the skill part of it. But again, that might be different for each person. So somebody consider there. Interesting question here. Can playing 2K, can that help you practice your IQ? I would say, I mean, this. I don't think it's going to help you substantially in any sort of way. Like, I wouldn't say 2K. I would say if you're going to, like, sit down and try and practice your IQ, it's much better to, like, watch real basketball. Because with 2K, like, what part of your IQ would that help, right? With 2K, like, if I'm playing 2K, okay, and I'm playing with, let's say, I haven't played 2K in a while, honestly. I haven't played 2K since, like, 2K17. That was when I was really playing it. But I was always the Clippers, right? And I'd be Chris Paul, and then I'd have Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan just set me a ball screen every single play, and then I'd just go play off the ball screen, right? So, yeah, technically, am I making a read off the ball screen? Sure, but guess what? 9 out of 10 times I'm throwing a lob to Blake Griffin. Okay, so, like, that's just, in a real game, you're obviously not going to be able to just do the same thing over and over and over again and be successful at it. So I guess if you want to look at it that way, I personally wouldn't do that. I would say, you know what, there's better ways to do that, more efficient uses of your time than doing that. Nothing wrong with 2K, but let's keep 2K where it's at. So Caleb asked me again, so he asked me, what's up with the Cam series? And for those of you who didn't see this, I posted on my story, well, I actually asked you guys questions about a week ago, and I had a couple people ask me about my younger brother, Cam, and they wanted to see, like, a series where, workouts, documenting his process and stuff. He's a senior in high school now, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So hoping to do some stuff with that next week potentially. We'll see. Just a lot, obviously, you guys know 2020, a lot of stuff going on, so I got to figure out, like, the person who I'm gonna have film, depending on whether or not they can actually come, so I have to get all that stuff kind of sorted out, but hopefully I'd like to start doing that next, because I think it's a good idea, and at some point we'll definitely get to that, because I think that there's some stuff you guys could learn from that, and I definitely want to get that to you guys. So it's in the works right now, but hopefully we'll start filming some stuff next week. That's all I can give you right now. A question I got a couple times is, so this one comes from Raph, and he says, season's canceled. What should I be doing to prepare for next year? So I think this is gonna depend, and it really has to do with you being able to be honest with yourself and saying, what do I need to get better at for next season? Maybe for you came into the year not a great shooter. Well, then that's what you should be getting better at. Okay, this is really nothing should change for you, except that now you have more time. Okay, so if what you're doing before the season, back in September, October, if what you were doing then you feel like still applies now, then go ahead and do that. Just make sure you have a plan, and then continue to do that. Really, there's not much of a difference, except that you just have more time to get stuff done. So you need to write down 2, 3, 4 things that you want to be good at next year, that you want to be able to hang your hat on, and plan out to work on those. That's really the step that you got to take right now. Next question from Marco says, how do you train decision making? This is going to be very straightforward, and it's playing basketball, playing against live defense. You can certainly learn a lot from watching basketball. I wouldn't say 2K, but watching like actual basketball, you can definitely learn a lot. And in a sense, you can get better at understanding the decisions that you have to make. You can get better at understanding options, right? A lot of times when I'm watching film or when I do a film breakdown, there's stuff that I learn doing that even though I haven't necessarily practiced it, like I could go and do that because now I understand it, right? I understand the angles that these guys take. I understand how these guys react when the defender's here, when it's there. So a lot of it is mental. So you can certainly get a lot better by watching film breakdowns, all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, decision making is a split-second thing, right? You have to make decisions in a basketball game very, very quickly. And the only way to really simulate that is to actually play. So the straightforward approach is to play 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, whatever, like playing against actual defense, even if it's just like like an actual game, right? Or an actual pickup, whatever it might be. Okay, that's where really you start to be able to piece things together. So listen, you might be a great shooter, but now you have to decide when to shoot, when to attack the closeout, when to make the extra pass, when to go all the way to the rim, when to pull up. Like, you make those decisions in the context of the game. Okay, so that's the biggest part, is playing more basketball. I posted this the other day because when I asked those questions last week, someone had there was a similar conversation that came up, and somebody asked me, they're like, hey, well, can we do like, what about like a controlled situation, which basically would just mean that like you can set up a situation to work on. So for example, maybe you and 3 other players work on a 2-on-2 ball screen situation where you have screener and the ball handler, and then they play off that. Maybe you work on playing out of a hard hedge or a drop, whatever it might be. And that I would group that in with playing. Now, for a lot of you guys, you aren't going to have access to anybody, to a trainer or someone who knows like how to set that up. But so that's why I didn't specifically say that. But you could even do that, like what I just said. You can get 3 of your teammates and then play 2-on-2, but every situation starts out of a ball screen. Okay, so you can work on that, your ability to play out of that situation. Okay, so let's just consider that for a second. If we want to get better at a certain situation and get it better at decision making in the situation, the best way to do it is to actually do that thing. I posted on my story a couple days ago about Chris Paul, because since 2013, Chris Paul has been in 20,000 ball screen actions. Like 20,000, that's 5 figures, 20,000. Now, that averages out to like, assuming he plays like 70 games a year over that entire span of time, that's like 40 ball screen actions a game. He's going through 40 ball screen actions. Okay, now let's just consider the fact that is like far and away the most over that time span. But also, despite the fact that he's been in the most of those situations, he is the most efficient mid-range player out of a ball screen in the entire NBA. And at the elbow area, he actually is the most efficient player in the NBA in general. Like, he's more efficient than Kevin Durant in the mid-range. Like, and obviously Kevin Durant is unguardable pulling up in the mid-range. You can't contest his shot. He's too big, right? Chris Paul is the complete opposite end of the size spectrum, yet he is the most efficient player in that elbow area. So that tells me that, okay, you know what? This guy is leading the NBA in assists per game coming out of a ball screen, leading the NBA in mid-range efficiency coming out of a ball screen, despite the fact that he is also shooting the most amount of attempts there. That tells me that the reason Chris Paul is so great in those ball screen situations, making passes, shooting those shots, is because he's done it 20,000 times in games, right? He's progressively gotten better and better and better and better at it because he's seen more defense. He's had to make more decisions. He's made more mistakes, and because of that, he's like battle tested, right? So ultimately my point with that is that if you want to be good at something, you have to do it more. You have to do it more. If you want to be good at making decisions, then you have to go into a game situation and make more decisions. You've got to play more basketball and make more decisions. It really is as simple as that. Okay, basketball there's really two pieces to it, right? There's the actual skills part of it, right, where you're shooting, your ball handling, you're finishing. But then there's the other part of it, which is mentally, right? Can you make decisions quickly? Can you where your confidence is at? Your ability to maintain focus, and that part of the game comes a lot of times through playing and developing your confidence in that manner. So when in doubt, you got to play more basketball. Decision making is just as much of a skill as shooting or ball handling is. You get better at it by actually doing that thing and practicing it. Okay, and honestly, without that piece, you're really going to struggle to put together all those other like physical skills, because you're not going to know when to use them or how to use them. You've got to be able to make good decisions, and that comes through playing. So biggest thing right there is just play more basketball. Play more basketball. So next question: what do coaches think about during games? As a player, as a player's point of view, it can give an upper hand. So for those of you who don't know, I also coach a high school team. And for me, like, there's not one thing you think about, but usually, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's just you're trying to win, right? You're trying to win the game, and you're going to think about specific things, of course, but the ultimate thing is you're trying to win. So your thought always is, what gives my team the best chance of winning right now? Who can I play right now? What can I run right now? Like, that's going to give me the best chance to win. And then that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So, from your perspective, understand that your best ability is your ability to contribute to winning. If you can contribute to winning, you're going to be a guy that is going to be indispensable. Your coach is not going to be able to take you out of the game, because that's what you do. Like, you help the team win. If I have a guy who I know I need to win, then he's going to play the whole time, and there's going to be plays drawn up for him. And like, that's what we're going to do. And if you want to be a guy who is that, you have to ask yourself, how much do I contribute to winning? If I don't contribute to winning, then it's going to be tough for you to get any sort of consistent minutes or shots or anything like that, because why would a coach do that, right? The goal is to win the game, and that's what you have to be able to contribute to. So from a coach's perspective, there's other things that you obviously think about too, also depending on what level you're at. But ultimately, you're trying to put your team in a position to win the game. And personally, that's where I'm at most of the time. So another question from Jackson: how could I train as hard as other players that have trainers, but I'm by myself? So I think with this, the biggest thing, and I talk about this sometimes, but the best, like, the good thing about basketball training today is that the good and bad thing is that there's so much out there. There's so many trainers out there. There's a lot of really, really good trainers out there now. That hasn't always been the case, in my opinion, but like right now, there's a lot of guys out here who are really, really good at what they do. There's a lot of workouts, drills that you can find. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there for you. There certainly is not a lack of information for you. So there's the good part, but also that can also be a bad thing, because sometimes it can just be, paralysis by analysis, where there's so much stuff out there you don't really know what to do. For me, I think the biggest thing is, if you don't have a trainer, then you want to find people who know what they're talking about, and then listen to what they're telling you to do. Okay? Maybe that's me. Maybe you think I don't know what I'm talking about. That's fine. But you got to go find somebody who does, right? Some person online who knows what they're talking about. Okay? After you do that, then you have to listen to what they're actually saying. And though that can be the kind of stuff that you follow, because the thing is, when you find a good trainer who knows what they're doing, chances are they put a lot of time and research into what they're actually doing. So for me, the biggest thing is just find guys who are knowledgeable and stick with them, because those guys have put a lot of research and time into what they're doing. That's the thing. As I get more and more into coaching and training, I have more and more respect for guys who do this at a high level, because I understand how hard, like, it's not easy. There are guys who make this stuff look so easy, but there's so much that you have to put into it first to actually get to the point where it becomes easy. In terms of just even things being as simple as, like, for example, this, like, when I first started, doing my podcast, like, putting together an episode was like a day-long process, like writing out a script, like, all, like, it took me so long to do that. And then 35 episodes in, it's much easier, and I can get things done much quicker. And it was the same thing with a video. I remember when I first started making videos, like it would take me like 2 days to film and edit something. Now I can get it done like in 5-6 hours, depending on the video, obviously. But there's progression there. So guys who are really good at what they do have put a lot into it. So you as a player probably haven't been around long enough to really put enough time into it to really know what you're doing. So you want to find people who have put the time into it, who can help you to get better and then stick with what they're doing. And with that, you want to have a plan that you stick to. Okay, so if you don't have a trainer, if you're working with a trainer, chances are they're going to have some sort of plan or progression that they're going to follow you through. So if I'm working with a guy, or I'm working with players in person, right, and I work with them for a long period of time, we're going to start off with something and we're going to build to something, okay? Maybe you're not great with your finishing with your right hand, but we're going to build to where you're great at finishing with your right hand off 1 foot, and then we're going to get it off 2 feet, and then we're going to go with floaters, and then we're going to work on different types of, off foot finishes. Like, we're going to build up to that, okay? It's the same thing if you're by yourself. You want to have a plan, a program that you stick to, because that's going to help you to progress forward. Okay, one of the hardest things to do is to stay motivated, stay focused, which actually is what something else we're going to talk about, when you don't have a plan. Okay, because it's very easy to be like, oh, you know what, like, I guess I'll just go to the gym tomorrow. I guess I'll just, I was going to work on this, but I guess I'm not going to because, maybe you just forget to, right? Also, if you have a trainer, that's accountability for you, right? You're going to go to a workout and they're going to make you do something. You might not want to do it. You might not want to work on a specific thing, okay? But that might be something that you need to work on. You might not want to work on, your shooting from the corner. Maybe you don't like shooting from the corner. I don't know why you wouldn't like that. It's the best shot in basketball. But maybe you don't like it, so maybe you don't work on it. But then you go see that trainer, and then he makes you work on it. So now when you're in games and you have those open shot opportunities, well, now all of a sudden you've been working on it. That can be with any skill. Maybe you don't like finishing with your left hand. So when you practice, you don't really do it. But that trainer makes you do it. So there's accountability there. If you don't have that, though, then you have to be that for yourself, okay? So find a program you can stick to, find guys who are knowledgeable and listen to what they say, and then ultimately have a plan, have a set schedule that you follow with workouts that are good and workouts that are going to hit those areas that you need to get better at, okay? Really, it just means that you have to take more responsibility for yourself because no one's going to do it for you if you don't have a trainer that you're working with. So that would be my advice to you. A good question here: how to gain recognition outside of the United States if you want to play college basketball. So this question, I get this question so much, and I don't really talk about it because I've grown up in the U.S. and obviously I haven't really experienced it, but I can kind of give you my advice just from players that I know who are international and all that stuff. So the biggest thing I think is that to play college basketball, right? There really is two ways to go about this. Maybe three. There are some guys who might play in countries where you have like really good basketball, right? Or maybe you play at a school or you play in a league that has a lot of good players. So maybe there's a few players every year from that league who come to the United States and play college basketball. So chances are there's already colleges that are watching your league or your team, and they've got connections, so they know who's good, who they need to look at. Who some of you guys might be in that situation. Okay, I've talked to a couple of you guys who are there, who have teammates who have come over, and you're looking to do the same thing. Like there's certain, that's certainly one thing. Then that's probably the minority of you guys, though. The majority of guys who ask me this question, typically they play in a country where basketball might not be that great, or the team they play on, the league they play on, isn't that great. So if that's the case, you really have two options. First of all, the more straightforward one would be to come play basketball in high school in the United States. Obviously, that costs money. So if you can't, like some of you guys can't do that, understandably, but a lot of the guys that I know who are from outside the United States and are now playing college basketball are guys who came over in high school to play, because it's just way more straightforward to get recruited, to get seen when you play in the United States. It's way easier. It's way more straightforward. So that's one thing. Then the other option would be you can also reach out to schools. So for example, like you can email coaches, send them full game film. Like you got to have full games. If you don't have film, then we can't talk about recruiting because no one knows what you look like. No one knows how you play, right? No one knows how good you are. You have to have full games recorded. Then you probably should also have some highlights too. So, cut up that game film and get 2 to 3 minutes of highlights in there. And then send both to coaches that you're interested in playing for. Also, the biggest thing is that you have to understand the level of talent you have to play college basketball. Even in the United States, there's not a lot of players who go from high school to college to play, right? There's not a lot. And that's in the United States where you have every school, every level at your disposal, okay? Still at that point, not a ton of guys are good enough to play in college. So if you're international, just understand that it's going to be way more difficult than that. So if you're from a country where, the basketball isn't that great, right? If you're from France or Germany or Spain where you guys have good basketball, then, things aren't quite as difficult. But if you're not from there, right, even if you are, you got to be one of the better players, right? If you're from a country that doesn't have good basketball, you better be one of the best players probably in your country to be able to be good enough to go play college, especially if you're talking about high major college basketball, playing for a big time school. Like if you're not the best player in your country, chances are you're not going to be able to do that. Okay. That's just being honest. So you have to understand what that actually means, like what it means to actually play college basketball. So the biggest thing there is be honest with yourself. Say, hey, you know what? I want to get to that point. Where am I at right now? And what do I need to do that? So if that's the case, then you better be working on your ability and be able to get to that point. But I would say the most straightforward way to do that is, come to the United States. I get DMs from players asking me about that, and that's why I say, listen, the easiest way to do that would be to come to America and play high school basketball here, because now you're going to have teams that, can a coach might be able to drive 20 minutes down the road to go watch you play instead of saying, hey, I have to judge this guy by watching some game film, but he lives, a 20-hour flight away, so not really possible for me to go recruit him. Now, he might still recruit you. Again, if you put up good numbers and you have good film, you might still get recruited anyway. He might not even have to go watch you play, right? He might say, listen, I watched this guy on film. He's got great measurables. He dominates his league, and I think he can help us win. He can contribute to winning, and you can get recruited that way. Okay, so biggest thing, come to America or have good film and send it to coaches who are interested. And again, be honest with yourself. If you know guys who have come over to play, look at where they're playing at, and then say, how good is that guy? How good is that guy in comparison to me? What numbers did he put up, right, versus what did I put up? If this guy put up crazy numbers and he's playing Division II basketball over here, where am I at then? Okay? That's what you have to be able to do. So it starts with being honest with yourself. Most players can't play at Duke. Most players can't play at Michigan State. Most players can't play at North Carolina. Okay? But there's a lot of other options as opposed to just that. So figure out where you're at. Reach out to schools if you need to. And that's really the biggest thing. You just gotta be smart about it. And there's certainly ways that you can do that. So that would be my advice, and that's usually what I tell people when they DM me, because it's obviously a much more difficult situation than it is in America, when it already is difficult to actually get to that point. So, but that would be my biggest thing. So another question, and I actually got two of these: how to find more willingness to work in those times that you just don't feel like it. And this is kind of what I already had gone to before, but I think the biggest thing is having a plan that you stick to. So you have your workouts listed out every day, so that's what I'm gonna go do today. I also talked about it a little bit last week, where you can set a timer, just switching up your workouts some days. So there might be some days where you're feeling slow, just the energy is not there. So at that point, switching up, doing something that you want to do. So think to yourself, what do I want to work on right now? What would I want to do? What drill would I like to do right now? And then do that drill. Just an example would be, if you're gonna go out and you have a planned out, I'm gonna do ball handling and I'm gonna do some shooting stuff, and you don't feel like doing it at all. Well, something you can do is say, I'm gonna play some shadow ball. So I'm gonna imagine if I had a defender right here, and I'm just gonna play some one-on-one right here. So that's something that's kind of fun to switch it up. And that can be something that you do to say, you know what, this will get me going, or maybe I spend an hour doing that. And to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's nothing wrong with you playing shadow ball on a one for an hour and that being your workout. That to me, like that's a good workout, especially because it's going to be a little bit more random than it would be if you were just kind of doing your normal stuff. So switching up is a big thing with that. I think it can also be as simple as like switching up your music, right? Or switching up what you're listening to. Like it can be really as something like that as well. And then sticking to your plan. So having a plan that you know is going to take you from point A to point B. So if you have a plan that says, you know what, I want to get here, and this plan is going to help me get here. So every day you can wake up and you can say, you know what, like if I follow this plan, I'm going to become a better player. I'm going to get better at X, Y, Z. That's much easier than you not having a plan and then you just getting up and having to find something to do, having to throw something together. It's much easier to lose that drive to go do it if you don't know what the actual result should be. It's just harder to do that. So that's what I would say going into all that. I'll answer a couple more things. We're getting up there. Actually, I have to answer one off of a DM that I got yesterday. Okay, this comes from Lucas, and the question that he asked, he said, Should I aim to shoot a certain number of shots in a workout, or aim to shoot a certain percentage but take lesser shots? The first method could be an aim to make 400 shots in a 2-hour workout, which would be translated to about 25 shots per 5 minutes. This workout would allow you to get up shots quickly as well. And the shooting is not casual shooting. It's focused on different types of shots with emphasis on full work in game scenarios, so game speed shooting. That's good. Second alternative would be to shoot sets of 25 and aim to make some certain numbers, so maybe 18 out of 25. And if you don't make it, to repeat that set. And then it also works on the different types of shots and what you want to work on. It's identical to the earlier option, but it's slower because you probably won't make 25 in 5 minutes if you're focused on percentage. Dilemma is, when you go the first method, you've got more shots, but your total accuracy will be lower than the second method. Benefits of the first method: higher volume of shots, meaning that you can find your rhythm during the workout and practice more. However, the second method has a greater emphasis on not missing, but you don't get up to put as many shots in the same amount of time. Which method would be better? And he also ends it with saying, this answer could possibly not be straightforward, as players at different levels might choose one method over the other. Completely true. This depends on where you're at. In general, I prefer the first method because when you have to hit a certain number, not that for you, that might be what you want to do. But if I'm running a workout, not always, sometimes I will choose that second method, but for the most part, we're going to go with the first method. Especially if it's a player who I know can make shots, then we're going to prioritize game speed shooting over basically anything else. So like I care much more about getting game reps up than I do necessarily about the exact number of makes and misses, because in a game, like we're trying to work towards getting good in games. So the issue with the second method is that if you're gonna stand around and shoot, not obviously, like you said, you're gonna shoot game speed shots, but if you're gonna force yourself to have to make a certain number of shots, that's where I find that like your brain just starts to go in autopilot, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm just droning along, doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And for some players, maybe that's not the case, but for me, I feel like, especially at a high number like that, like we're not talking like making 5 shots, like you got to go 5 or 6 here. That's something that I do all the time. I'll say, listen, you got to make 5 out of 7 here to move on, right? But 18 out of 25 is a lot of makes. It's a very good percentage too. So I probably would stay away from doing that very often. Maybe as like a finisher, so maybe at the end of a workout, I say, okay, this last drill, we're gonna go around the perimeter, and you've got to make 8 out of 12 shots at all 5 spots, right? That might be what we do. But that's not going to be, I probably wouldn't make a whole workout out of that, but I might do it for lower reps. So I might say, you got to make 3 out of 4 at this spot to move on. And that's something that I would certainly do. So benefits to both of them. In general, though, I'm probably going to do the first method more often than not, where I'm just going to get those reps up. And listen, we're going to, as we repeat that workout, if your main focus is I'm going game speed on these shots, you're going to get better at that as you progress forward. Okay, so that's why I feel like that can honestly translate better than just worrying about makes. Because the other thing with makes is that for some players, you may be able to keep up the game speed the whole time, even when you're focused on making so many shots. But a lot of times, if there's so much emphasis put on those makes, especially if it's some sort of game-like shot, right? If we're working on 2 dribble step backs and we have to make 18 out of 25, well, that's where the issue becomes. You're going to start to think to yourself like, okay, I got to make this shot. So you might slow down a little bit, right? You might take it a little bit easier because you like if you go and you do a great rep but you miss the shot, it hurts you, right? So that can kind of discourage you from actually going game speed. Whereas if we're just going for a certain amount of reps or a straightforward number of makes, like 5 makes, then I'm confident that player can go game speed the whole time. And to me, that's more important. So it's really you prioritize. But again, you got to figure out what works best for you. In my opinion, though, more often than not, I'm going with some sort of variation of that first method, just because I feel like that really is where we get the best return on investment when it comes to time. So answer a couple more. I have a good one from Quicksand Hoops. Shout out to him. Got one from my guy Hasan. Shout out to Juice Made Hoops as well. He asked me thoughts on Mikey Williams. So I'll be quick with this. I obviously watched him play. Not a lot, but I have a workout on him actually. And it's really impressive to see guys who just again are like athletes. Like it's really incredible to see a guy who can like move like that. For me, like I don't necessarily keep up with like, and that's Hasan's thing, Juice Made Hoops. He's like the guy. So if you guys are interested in like basically all things high school basketball, go check him out, Juice Made Hoops. He was on the podcast a few episodes ago, so go check him out because he's really the guy when it comes to all that stuff. Like you wanna be updated with everything that's happening with high school basketball. You gotta go subscribe to his channel. Go subscribe. Trust me, like he's the guy when it comes to that sort of stuff. But for me, like I'm definitely not that. Especially because of high school basketball, like I'm just not in the loop with it. So I don't know who's ranked where, who's what. All I know basically is watching Hasan's videos. That's all I know. So I'll be excited to see where he's at in 4 years, right? If he's in the NBA, if not, like who knows? That's my thoughts on him now. Great player, but we'll see. We'll see where he's at because we see all the time, and Hasan and I talked about this. Like we see guys all the time who are great in high school, right? Phenomenal players, and then they kind of fizzle out because players catch up athletically, they catch up physically. As far as I know, Mikey Williams is going to be undersized. Like he's not that big, but he's a great athlete. So can you overcome you being undersized with your actual skill? And we'll see. We'll see if he can do that against guys as the competition level gets better and better. Let's see. I'll probably go with like 2 more questions. I already have one from Quicksand. I'm gonna see if I find the best one here. Okay, I potentially have one. Actually, okay, I'm gonna put one more in. So first of all, shout out to my guy Gabe. Gabe, that's my boy. He said, "Who do you think the GOAT is, and why is it Michael Jordan?" So Gabe, that's my guy, and this is he's saying this with like a little bit of a grin on his face because we're in a group chat with my other guy Howland, and shout out to him, shout out to Houston Rockets, and we have conversations about LeBron, Jordan all the time, and I'm firmly on the LeBron James side of the fence. Okay, so you guys can come at me in the comments. I'm sure I've talked about this before, where I'll just have random Michael Jordan fans come at me because I think LeBron is the best all around player of all time, simply because of the numbers and him doing more with less. All right, I don't necessarily get into the whole thing, but my opinion, LeBron is the best to ever do it. And here's the thing, though, I'll entertain Michael Jordan as well. Like Michael Jordan or LeBron James, it's really a 1A 1B situation. Like you might have your guy that you pick, but they're both right there. Like you can go with either one. Like if someone says they think Michael Jordan's the GOAT, like that's fine. Like there's certainly arguments to be made about that, and I can certainly understand that argument too. Like there's really great reasons why you might choose that. Once you get past those two, though, that's where I'm out. Like those two are the conversation. Then past that, it's like nah. There's nobody else who's when we talk about the 3 different categories, or the 3 categories that matter, right? Statistics, awards, and championships. The combination of those 3. Though there are other guys up there Kareem, for example, has a lot of stuff like that as well. But when I talk about the amount of things LeBron James can do on the basketball court as compared to Kareem, it's just it's night and day. And we look at the advanced stats too. Like if you look at, I would encourage you guys to go look at some advanced stats of LeBron and look at like the win shares. So what that basically means is like you can look at offensive win shares and defensive win shares. So basically what that means is that the amount of wins that player's offense that player's offense actually dictates. So basically what that means is like how much does your offensive output impact your team, and also the same thing with defense. And then they have an overall score, and LeBron's is significantly higher than Michael Jordan's. Okay, I haven't looked, but I believe LeBron's is the most ever, or the highest ever when it comes to win share. So that lets you know that player has, either they play on a team where there aren't many other players who are contributing close to their level, or they play on a team that, so for example, so if you have a low win share total, either you're not winning many games, or you have other players on your team who also are contributing at a very, very high level. Okay? If your win share total is high, either you win a lot of games, or you contribute a lot compared to your teammates. Okay? So that's just, again, another stat that I look at, but I don't want to go too far into like the nerd stats or whatever. I'll let you guys do whatever, but shout out to Gabe for that question. Okay, we'll go one more, and then we'll go with my last question. So this comes from Abdul. He says, should we change our workouts every month or two so we can target different skills in those months? So I think this depends. Personally, that I wouldn't say that there's anything wrong with that. I just think like it shouldn't have to be a set like, oh, okay, January I'm going to do this, February I'm going to do this. I think it should be more of like a how do you progress? Like at the end of January, do you feel like you should progress to another thing, or do you feel like you should keep on working what you're doing? I think you have to take into account like how you actually are feeling, how you're looking, and I think that is really the bigger thing than like an actual time frame. So again, depends. A lot of answers you guys are going to start to learn. A lot of answers to basketball is it depends, because it does, like it varies player to player. And there's not like I have there's a lot of questions in here that are like real specific situations where like someone's asking like, what if my defender forces me to this direction? Like, I mean, I'm not playing for you. Like I don't see through your eyes, right? I'm not your like, I don't see what actually happens. So like that's one of those things where it's like you just got to play more. Like if he's forcing you to a direction you want to go to, don't go that direction. Pass the ball, and then like get a jab step so you can move your defender, get a shot fake so you can raise it. Like there's a lot of ways to come around that stuff. But there's a lot of specific stuff. The issue is that every situation is different. That's why, going back to an earlier point, playing basketball is so important, because you have to be able to make decisions, and you want to be successful in a myriad of situations, right? And if you're good at decision making, you can be dropped into basically any game, and you're going to be able to be successful because you've experienced that stuff before. Whereas if you're more of like I need to have, every answer is going to be black and white, like do I do this or do I do that or do I do this? You're going to struggle when the defense switches things up on you. I've talked about that all the time. I'll link an episode above so you can check out that, where I talk about block versus random training. And that's really what it comes back to. Last question I'll get to before I wrap it up comes from my guy Quicksand Hoops. Shout out to him. If you guys have not watched the podcast episode with Quicksand Hoops, my guy Gabe, I believe that was 2 episodes ago. So go check that out if you have not. And he asked me, what mark do you want to leave on the game of basketball? When I started all this stuff, it was really about my thought was, I think it was July of 2019. I want to say maybe June of 2019. And like my honest thought was like, okay, I just want to post stuff that I know would have been helpful when I was a younger player. Like stuff that like it took me a long time to learn or to figure out, that I wish I would have known back then. If I would have known back then, I would have been a lot better, a lot quicker. I would have been a lot more successful earlier on, and I wouldn't have had to take a lot of the lumps that I did because I just didn't know any better. So that was really my thing, is like I want to help players to really, it's about moving the game forward, right? there's a lot of things that, we dealt with, and my guy Gabe, he knows that too, because we're about the same age, a little older than me, but we've certainly, like, the similarity there is that we didn't grow up in this era, right? This era of basketball training, like, there's so much stuff out there that, like, we didn't have when we were in middle school, high school. So, like, being able to help guys out and move the game forward so we can get past some of the surface level stuff that it might have taken. For example, if there's something that took me to my junior year of high school to learn, if I can help somebody learn that when they're a freshman in high school, that's moving the game forward, because now when they're a junior, they've had that down already, right? They're not having to learn that new. They've had it down already. So I think what our entire mission should be as trainers, as people who are helping out players, is how can we move the game forward? How can we make the game better? How can we make players better? How can we make the ultimate product on the floor? How can we make that better, more entertaining? And how can we help more players succeed? Because for a long time, it really wasn't, there was the guys who had it and the guys who didn't. Like, if you didn't have somebody who could tell you, didn't have an older brother or a dad who, like, knew a ton about basketball, or, your mom was a coach or whatever, or, you grew up in a great basketball area where you had great coaches. Like, if you didn't have that, like, you were going to be so far behind a lot of guys who did. But now we have the opportunity to kind of even that playing field where really anybody has access to that stuff. So again, that's what I was saying. Like, there's so much stuff out there. There's no excuse to not have a plan, at least. That's my goal, is just, again, contribute what I can, contribute stuff that I know would have helped me a long time ago, and ultimately help the game to progress forward. And I think that it is certainly progressing forward, and I want to do my part to continue to add to that. So that's really my biggest thing when it comes to that. But really good question there. Shout out to all you guys for the questions. If I didn't get to your question, I'm sorry. There's a lot of them. But again, I'll do another Q&A at some point. So if I didn't get to yours, you'll have another opportunity to do that. But of course, if you have any questions, you can always DM me as well. So if I didn't answer, just send me a DM. And again, a lot of times my topics for these podcasts come off of stuff that I get. Like, there's stuff I talked about today that I probably could do a whole episode on. But obviously, I'm trying to get through some stuff, so, we're going to work on that. The other thing, too, as you guys are seeing this, the Perimeter Score System Elite Ball Handling Christmas sale is live, so I believe this is going to go until either Christmas Day or the day after Christmas. But if you go to my Instagram, you'll see it. A lot of you guys would have gotten an email with it, but sale going on right now, and there's been a bunch of new updates to the Perimeter Score System as well, so I encourage you guys to check that out as well. And again, like I said, having a plan is such a big thing. So that's my thing with the Perimeter Score System. I want to have a plan available for you guys to follow, to take you from that point A to point B. And then a lot of other bonus stuff included with that. That's going to help you guys with that IQ, decision making, confidence, all the stuff that goes along with being a great player. Like, I want to encompass all that sort of stuff. So again, go check that stuff out. That'll be linked down below as well. And shout out to you guys who have been tuning in. Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.